The grand hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with nervous energy, a cacophony of whispers and murmurs from 100 different species filling the cavernous space. The normally orderly proceedings had given way to clusters of anxious delegates, their appendages gesticulating wildly as they spoke in hushed, urgent tones. At the center of it all stood Grimmick, the council representative. His forearms crossed tightly across his chest as if physically holding himself together. Today was unprecedented in the council's 5,000-year history. Two Deathworld species would meet face-to-face for the first time in an official capacity. The humans and the Larians, both evolutionary nightmares forged in the crucibles of the most hostile planets the galaxy had to offer. "This is madness," hissed Councillor Zivrik, his translucent membranes fluttering with agitation. "Bringing two apex predator species into the same room? We might as well detonate a nova bomb in the chamber." Grimmick's outer eyes blinked slowly, while his inner pair remained fixed on the entrance doors. "The treaty requires all spacefaring species be granted representation. We cannot deny either of them their rights under galactic law. Laws can be amended," Zivrik countered, "especially when they threaten to unleash bloodshed upon this sacred ground." Before Grimmick could respond, a sharp tone rang through the hall, silencing the chatter instantly. The massive doors on the eastern side of the chamber began to part with a low, hydraulic hiss. "The humans have arrived," announced the automated system, its synthetic voice echoing throughout the suddenly silent chamber. Captain Dylan Sebastian stood at the threshold, his tall frame accentuated by the crisp lines of his formal military uniform. The deep navy blue fabric was adorned with silver insignia that caught the light as he stepped forward, flanked by Lieutenant Ivy Rodriguez and communications specialist Nick Vulov. Their posture was perfectly aligned, shoulders squared, and faces set in neutral expressions that revealed nothing of their thoughts. Dylan's eyes, a piercing steel blue, scanned the room methodically, assessing every exit, every delegate, every potential threat. This was hardly his first diplomatic mission, but it was undoubtedly the most critical. Humanity's future in the galactic community hung in the balance, and as Earth's representative, the weight of that responsibility pressed down on him like the gravity of a gas giant. The delegates parted before them, creating a wide berth as the human contingent made their way toward the central platform. Dylan could feel the fear radiating from the assembled aliens, could almost smell it, like ozone before a lightning strike. He'd experienced this reaction countless times before. To most species in the galaxy, humans were terrifying anomalies, endurance predators who could survive almost any environment, heal from grievous injuries, and persist through conditions that would kill most sentient beings. "Fascinating," Nick whispered through barely moving lips, his translator unit picking up fragments of conversation. "They're debating whether our uniforms are ceremonial or combat-ready." Ivy suppressed a smile. "Both, technically." "Keep focused," Dylan murmured, his gaze never wavering as they reached their designated position. He stood at parade rest, hands clasped behind his back, the very picture of military discipline and restraint. Grimmick approached cautiously, his lower set of arms extended in the traditional council greeting while his upper set remained in a position that Dylan recognized as defensive. The captain reciprocated the gesture with practiced precision. "Captain Sebastian," Grimmick began, his voice pitched low, "we appreciate your punctuality and restraint." Dylan inclined his head slightly. "The United Earth Federation values these proceedings. Counselor, we come in peace and with respect for council protocols." A nervous titter ran through the assembly at the humans' use of the ancient phrase, "we come in peace," words that had become almost mythological across the galaxy, often preceding tales of human resilience and adaptability that seemed impossible to non-Deathworld species. "Yes. Well," Grimmick continued, clearly uncomfortable, "we are still awaiting the arrival of the Larian delegation. They are fashionably late, it seems." Dylan's face betrayed nothing, but inwardly, he was calculating. The Larian's tardiness was likely deliberate, a power play, an attempt to unsettle the proceedings. It was exactly what he would have expected from them. "We are patient," he replied simply. As if on cue, another tone sounded, this one deeper and more resonant than the first. The western doors began to part, revealing a darkness beyond that seemed to swallow the light. "The Larians have arrived," announced the system. The silence that fell this time was absolute. A vacuum of sound so complete that Dylan could hear the soft whirring of environmental systems cycling air through the massive chamber. From the shadows emerged the Larian delegation, and despite himself, Dylan felt his pulse quicken. They moved with predatory grace, their bodies low to the ground and sinuous. The Larians resembled nothing so much as massive, evolved felines. Their muscular forms covered in short, dense fur that ranged from midnight black to deep, royal purple. But it was their faces that captured and held attention, intelligent, almost reptilian eyes set in broad, powerful skulls with jaws that could crush bone with ease. They possessed 6 limbs, 4 powerful legs that carried them with silent efficiency, and 2 smaller, dexterous arms folded against their chests, tipped with retractable claws that glinted like obsidian daggers in the chamber's light. Leading them was pack leader Vizara, her coat a lustrous indigo marked with jagged stripes of silver that denoted her high rank. She was larger than her companions by at least a third, and the scars that marred her visible hide told stories of battles won and dominance established. Her eyes, a startling amber that seemed to glow from within, locked immediately on Dylan, assessing, calculating, measuring. The Larians moved in perfect formation, their steps synchronized in a display of unity and discipline that mirrored the human's own military precision. The contrast between the species could not have been more stark. Humans, upright and rigid in their uniforms, representing order and structure. Larians, fluid and primal in their movements, embodying power and deadly efficiency. The council chamber, already tense, became a pressure cooker of anxiety. Several delegates visibly trembled, and one small avian representative actually fainted, collapsing into a soft heap of feathers that was quickly attended to by medical drones. Grimmock, to his credit, stood his ground as the Larians approached, though his skin had taken on a pallid hue that betrayed his fear. "Pack leader Vizara," he greeted, his voice cracking slightly before he regained control. "The Council welcomes the Larian Dominion to this historic session." Vizara's response came in a low, resonant growl that the translation systems rendered into standard galactic. "The Pack acknowledges the Council's hospitality." Her gaze never left Dylan, and he returned it unflinchingly. In this moment, the 2 representatives of their respective death worlds were engaged in a silent communication that transcended species and language. Predator recognizing predator, warrior acknowledging warrior. The council chamber held its collective breath as the Larians took their position opposite the humans, creating a triangular formation with Grimmock at the apex. The stage was set for what many believed would be either the beginning of a new era of cooperation or the prelude to a catastrophic confrontation between the galaxy's most feared species. Grimmock cleared his throat, the sound unnaturally loud in the silent chamber. "As is customary, before formal proceedings begin, the representatives will approach the central dais for the traditional acknowledgement." This was the moment everyone had been dreading, the point at which the humans and Larians would come within striking distance of each other. Security drones hovered discreetly at the periphery of the chamber, their weapon systems on standby. No one truly believed they would be effective if either Deathworld species decided to attack, but their presence provided at least the illusion of safety. Dylan stepped forward first, his movements measured and deliberate. Vizara matched him, her powerful form flowing across the floor with liquid grace. They approached the circular dais at the center of the chamber, stopping at opposite edges, up close. The size difference between them was apparent. Vizara stood nearly chest-high to Dylan on all fours, her mass easily twice that of the human. "Captain Dylan Sebastian, representing the United Earth Federation," Dylan stated formally, his voice clear and steady. "Pack Leader Vizara, voice of the Larian Dominion." Vizara responded, her words rumbling from deep within her chest. Grimmick hovered nervously at the third point of their triangle, visibly struggling to maintain his composure. "As representatives of your respective peoples, you are invited to acknowledge each other according to your customs, before the witness of the Galactic Council." This was the moment of truth. The customary acknowledgement between species was typically a formality, a brief exchange of gestures or words that signified mutual recognition. But between two apex predator species, both evolved from territorial hunters, such an exchange carried far greater significance. The chamber was so quiet that Dylan could hear the soft rustle of Vizara's fur as she shifted her weight. He could feel the eyes of every delegate upon them, waiting, wondering which of them would make the first move. The tension stretched taut as a wire, seconds expanding into what felt like hours. And then, to the absolute shock of everyone present, including Dylan himself, Vizara lowered her massive head and bowed. The gesture was unmistakable, deliberate, and profound. In the social dynamics of predator species throughout the galaxy, such a posture represented vulnerability, submission, respect. It was the last thing anyone expected from the notoriously proud and dominant Larians. A collective gasp rippled through the assembly. Grimmick's four eyes widened to perfect circles, and even Dylan's carefully maintained composure slipped for a fraction of a second, his eyebrows rising in surprise. But what happened next shocked the council even more. Dylan Sebastian, captain of the United Earth Federation and representative of humanity, stepped forward and gently, with a tenderness that seemed impossible from a species known for their capacity for violence, extended his hand and stroked the fur between Vizara's ears. The gesture was intimate, familiar, and spoke of a relationship that defied all expectations. Vizara rumbled softly, a sound that the translation systems didn't bother to interpret, but that carried clear connotations of contentment. "It's good to see you again, old friend," Dylan said quietly, though in the perfect silence of the chamber, his words carried to every corner. Vizara raised her head, amber eyes meeting blue. "And you, battle brother, the stars have been empty without human songs." Grimmick's mouth opened and closed several times before he managed to produce words. "You know each other?" Dylan turned to the confused counselor, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "The Larian Dominion and the United Earth Federation have had unofficial contact for nearly 15 Earth years." "Impossible," whispered one delegate, the word echoing what many were thinking. "The isolation protocols were respected in official channels." Vizara interrupted, her powerful voice silencing the murmurs. "But the void between stars is vast, and those who hunt in similar patterns eventually cross paths." The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembly. The idea that the two most feared species in the galaxy had not only met before, but had apparently formed some kind of alliance or friendship without the Council's knowledge or sanction was unprecedented. "Perhaps," Dylan suggested, his tone diplomatic but firm, "we should move to the conference chamber for a more detailed discussion. I believe Pack Leader Vizara and I have much to explain." Grimmick, still visibly stunned, could only nod in agreement. As the main assembly dispersed into chaotic discussion, Dylan, Vizara, and a select group of council representatives moved to a smaller chamber adjacent to the main hall. Here, away from the hundreds of eyes that had been watching their every move, the atmosphere shifted subtly. The tension didn't disappear entirely, but it transformed into something more akin to wary curiosity. Ivy and Nick took positions flanking Dylan, while two Larians, introduced as Hunt Master Karak and Diplomat Shireen, positioned themselves similarly around Vizara. The formation was mirrored, perfectly on both sides. Another indication of the uncanny similarities between the two species despite their vastly different physiologies. "I believe we are owed an explanation," Grimmish began once everyone was settled, his professional demeanor reasserting itself. "Unsanctioned contact between newly discovered spacefaring species violates Council Directive 5923B, established specifically to prevent potential conflicts." Dylan leaned forward, resting his elbows on the polished surface of the conference table. "With all due respect, Counselor, that directive was established by species who evolved in environments that could be classified as benign. The assumptions underlying it do not apply to Deathworld species." "Elaborate," requested one of the other council representatives, a tall, willowy being with iridescent skin. It was Vizara who answered, her massive form somehow managing to look comfortable despite the furniture clearly not designed for her physiology. "Predators recognize predators," she stated simply. "When our scout ships first detected human vessels at the edges of the Cerulean expanse, we did not see potential prey or competitors. We recognized kindred spirits, beings shaped by worlds that demand strength, adaptability, and cunning. Our first official encounter was actually an emergency," Dylan added. "One of our research vessels suffered a catastrophic drive failure in a system we later learned was on the outskirts of Laarian territory. Standard protocols dictated non-interference, but such protocols are meaningless when lives hang in the balance," Vizara finished. "My hunt pack was patrolling the sector. We detected the energy surge from the failing drive and moved to investigate. They could have destroyed our crippled ship," Dylan continued. "Instead, they provided assistance with repairs and shared their knowledge of the local stellar conditions that had contributed to the drive failure." Grimmick's inner eyes narrowed skeptically. "And this single encounter led to 15 years of clandestine cooperation." "Not clandestine," Ivy interjected, speaking for the first time. "Unofficial. We reported the encounter to Earth Command. The decision was made to pursue cautious cultural exchange while respecting the Council's official channels for first contact procedures." "We made a similar determination," Huntmaster Karok added, his voice deeper and rougher than Vizara's. "Our encounters with humans revealed more similarities than differences. Both our species evolved on planets that tried to kill us at every turn. Both developed pack behaviors and complex social structures to survive. Both value strength but understand that cooperation often achieves what raw power cannot." The Council representatives exchanged glances, clearly struggling to reconcile this information with their preconceptions about both species. "If what you say is true," the willowy alien said slowly, "why the theatrics today? The bow, the apparent surprise at seeing each other?" Dylan and Vizara shared a look that spoke volumes about their understanding of political theater. "The Council expected a confrontation," Dylan explained. "You positioned security drones, prepared containment fields, and generally treated this meeting as a potential disaster scenario. Had we simply walked in as allies, the shock might have been counterproductive. So instead, you chose to shock us with a display of submission from a species known for their dominance hierarchy," Grimmick asked, a note of grudging admiration in his voice. Vizara's mouth opened in what the humans recognized as a Laarian smile, revealing rows of gleaming teeth that caused several council members to flinch involuntarily. "Not submission," she corrected. "Respect. There is a difference." "In Laarian culture," Dylan elaborated, "the bow Vizara performed is reserved for those considered absolute equals, typically only given to other pack leaders of equal standing. It acknowledges the capacity for mutual destruction and chooses mutual respect instead." "And the petting?" asked another counselor, clearly uncomfortable with the term. Dylan actually chuckled at this. "A human gesture of affection, adapted to Laarian physiology. Touch is important to both our species, though in different contexts. We've spent years developing a hybrid of cultural exchanges that honors both our traditions." As the explanation continued, the atmosphere in the room gradually shifted. The council representatives' fear began to give way to fascination as Dylan and Vizara recounted the story of their species' unofficial alliance, how human medical technology had helped treat a devastating plague that had threatened Larian cubs 3 years prior, how Larian expertise in gravitational engineering had advanced human shipbuilding by decades, how joint military exercises conducted in empty systems had evolved into cultural exchanges and even some interspecies sporting competitions. "The universe is vast and often hostile," Vizara said, her amber eyes sweeping the room. "The Larian dominion has survived by recognizing strength and respecting it. In humans, we found not just strength but complementary abilities. Their endurance complements our speed. Their adaptability complements our specialized expertise. Together, we are more than the sum of our parts." "Which brings us to the real purpose of today's meeting," Dylan added, his expression growing serious. "The United Earth Federation and the Larian Dominion wish to formalize our alliance under council auspices and propose a joint initiative for exploration of the Perseus Void." This announcement sent another ripple of surprise through the gathered representatives. The Perseus Void was a vast, largely unexplored region at the edge of charted space, rumored to contain resources of immense value, but also dangers that had deterred previous expeditions. "You wish to explore the Void together?" Grimmick clarified, his disbelief evident. "We do," Vizara confirmed. "Human ships equipped with Larian sensor technology, crewed by specialists from both our worlds. The Council has hesitated to sanction exploration of the Void due to the risks involved. We propose that Deathworlders are uniquely qualified to face those risks." The discussion that followed was intense and detailed, with questions about logistics, command structures, resource sharing, and dozens of other practical considerations. Throughout it all, what struck the Council representatives most forcefully was the easy rapport between the human and Larian delegations, the way they seamlessly complemented each other's points, anticipated questions, and demonstrated a depth of mutual understanding that typically took decades or even centuries to develop between disparate species. As the meeting progressed into its third hour, Dr. Eliana Wright, the human xenobiologist, joined the discussion to present detailed findings on the biological compatibilities and differences between humans and Larians. Her presentation included fascinating insights into how both species had evolved similar neurological responses to threat and reward, despite their vastly different evolutionary paths. "In essence," Dr. Wright concluded, "both humans and Larians process fear as a challenge rather than a deterrent. Where many species evolve to avoid danger, our species evolved to overcome it. This fundamental similarity in our approach to adversity forms the bedrock of our successful cooperation." By the time the conference concluded, the initial shock had transformed into cautious optimism. The Council representatives agreed to bring the alliance proposal to the full assembly for consideration, with Grimmick himself volunteering to advocate for its approval. As the meeting dispersed, Dylan found himself walking alongside Vizara through one of the Council station's vast observation corridors, a transparent tunnel that offered breathtaking views of the surrounding nebula and star field. They moved in comfortable silence for several minutes, both contemplating the significance of the day's events. "Your timing was perfect," Dylan finally said, glancing down at his Larian counterpart. "The bow caught even me by surprise, and I knew it was coming." Vizara rumbled with amusement. The look on Grimmick's face was worth the indignity. "I shall be explaining myself to the matriarchs for months." "Was it really such an indignity?" Dylan asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. "I've never fully understood the nuances of the gesture in your culture." Vizara was silent for a moment, her powerful form moving with fluid grace beside him. "Among my kind, to bow is to acknowledge that another could end your life. But you trust they will not. It is intimacy of a kind, vulnerability freely given. Like trust," Dylan suggested. "Yes," Vizara agreed. "Like trust, but more primal. When I bowed to you today, I meant it not as theater, but as truth. Our peoples could destroy each other, but instead, we choose alliance. That choice is more powerful than any weapon. They paused at a viewing port, gazing out at the spectacular cosmic panorama before them. Somewhere out there, beyond the known and charted stars, lay the Perseus Void, their next great challenge. They still fear us, Dylan observed quietly. Both of us. As they should, Vizara replied, but there was no malice in her tone. Fear is appropriate when facing the unknown. What matters is whether fear leads to hostility or respect. And which do you think we achieved today? Vizara's amber eyes reflected the starlight as she turned to look at him. A beginning, nothing more, nothing less. The rest will depend on what we build together. Dylan nodded, understanding the wisdom in her words. The alliance between humans and Larians would reshape the political landscape of the galaxy, challenging long-held assumptions about competition and cooperation between powerful species. It would not be an easy path. But then, neither humans nor Larians had evolved to take the easy path. To the beginning, then, he said, offering a formal salute that bridged their cultures, right fist over heart, head inclined slightly forward. Vizara returned the gesture in her own fashion, rising briefly to her hind legs and crossing her dexterous front limbs in a mirror of his pose. To the beginning, she echoed, and to the hunt that follows. Together, representatives of Earth and the Larian Dominion stood silhouetted against the stars, two apex predators who had discovered that sometimes the greatest strength lies not in domination, but in the choice to bow. Back in the main council chamber, the news of the Human-Larian alliance had spread like wildfire, transforming from shocking revelation to the subject of intense speculation and debate. Delegates clustered in animated groups, discussing implications, opportunities, and concerns. Lieutenant Ivy found herself surrounded by curious representatives eager to learn more about humanity's experience with the feared Larians. "Is it true?" asked a small, multi-limbed being with compound eyes, "that you have actually visited Larian worlds without protective suits?" Ivy smiled diplomatically. "Yes, several diplomatic delegations have visited their home world, La Prime. It's actually less hostile to human physiology than some environments on Earth. Their gravity is slightly stronger, and the atmosphere has higher oxygen content, but nothing we can't adapt to." "And they visited Earth as well?" inquired another delegate. "They have," Nick Vulov confirmed, joining the conversation. "Their first cultural exchange delegation caused quite a stir, especially in our more remote areas. There's a town in Montana. That's a region on Earth where the local rangers still tell stories about hikers reporting alien big cats in the mountains during that visit." This elicited nervous laughter from the gathered aliens, the tension beginning to dissolve as curiosity overtook fear. Across the chamber, Hunt Master Karok was engaged in his own impromptu diplomatic session, his massive form drawing a mix of fearful and fascinated onlookers. "The humans are formidable in ways different from our own," he was explaining to a group of scientists. "Where we excel in burst speed and strength, they demonstrate remarkable endurance. A human can literally run prey to exhaustion, continuing pursuit for days if necessary." "That's terrifying," admitted one of the scientists, a serpentine being with translucent scales. "It is impressive," Karok corrected. "All life adapts to survive. The paths evolution takes are neither good nor evil, merely effective or ineffective. Humans and Larians both evolved effective strategies for survival on worlds that offered little mercy." Meanwhile, diplomat Shireen had drawn her own audience, her sleeker form and more refined mannerisms making her slightly less intimidating to the council species. Unlike most Larians, she had mastered the art of modulating her voice to sound less threatening to non-predator species. "The cultural exchange has not been without challenges," she acknowledged in response to a question. Our concepts of personal space, for instance, differ significantly. Larians maintain larger territories than humans, but smaller intimate distances. This led to some misunderstandings in early interactions. What kind of misunderstandings? Prompted a curious delegate. Shireen's expression shifted in what humans had learned to recognize as amusement. A human delegation once spent an entire 3-day conference believing they had offended their Larian hosts, simply because our pack members kept a distance of several meters during formal proceedings. They later discovered this was a sign of respect for human territorial customs, not displeasure. Conversely, our diplomats were initially startled by humans' tendency to stand close together during casual conversations, which in our culture signals either aggression or intimate family bonds. As these conversations unfolded throughout the chamber, Grimmick observed from a raised platform, his forearms now relaxed at his sides. Beside him stood Councillor Zivrik, who had been so vehemently opposed to the meeting just hours earlier. I would not have believed it possible, Zivrik admitted, his translucent membranes now still. 2 apex predator species, not just coexisting but actively cooperating. It defies everything we thought we knew about evolutionary psychology. Grimmick nodded slowly. Perhaps that is the lesson here. Our assumptions about Deathworld species have been based on fear rather than understanding. We saw their capacity for violence and missed their capacity for connection. Do you truly believe their alliance will be approved by the full council? Zivrik asked. I believe, Grimmick replied thoughtfully, that the galaxy is changing more rapidly than we anticipated. The humans and Larians have shown us that adaptation extends beyond physical traits to encompass cultural evolution as well. The Council can either adapt alongside them or risk becoming obsolete. Their conversation was interrupted by a soft chime, signaling the return of Captain Sebastian and pack leader Vizara to the main chamber. As the 2 representatives entered side by side, the crowd parted before them, not in fear this time, but in a gesture that bordered on respect. Dylan and Vizara made their way to the central dais, where a communications terminal had been prepared. With a nod from Grimmick, Dylan activated the system, and a holographic projection sprang to life above the platform, a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy, with the Perseus Void clearly highlighted at its edge. Representatives of the Galactic Council, Dylan began, his voice carrying easily through the chamber. Pack leader Vizara and I wish to present our formal proposal for the joint human-Larian expedition into the Perseus Void. As he spoke, the hologram zoomed in on the void, revealing preliminary survey data and proposed exploration routes. The technical presentation that followed was comprehensive and compelling, with Dylan and Vizara alternating seamlessly as they outlined the scientific, economic, and strategic benefits of their plan. What struck the assembled delegates most forcefully, however, was not the content of the presentation but the harmony with which it was delivered. Here were representatives of 2 species that, by all conventional wisdom, should have been locked in bitter competition for dominance. Instead, they demonstrated a level of cooperation and mutual respect that many council species had taken centuries to achieve with their nearest neighbors. When the formal presentation concluded, there was a moment of profound silence before the chamber erupted in a cacophony of voices, questions, comments, and expressions of support or concern, all blending together in a symphony of diplomatic chaos. Grimmick raised all 4 arms, gradually restoring order. The Council will need time to review this proposal in detail, he announced. However, I believe I speak for many when I say that today has challenged our preconceptions in ways both unsettling and illuminating. He turned to face Dylan and Vizara directly. Whatever the Council's ultimate decision regarding the Perseus expedition, the alliance between humans and Larians has already achieved something perhaps more valuable. It has forced us to reconsider what is possible when ancient fears give way to new understanding. The formal proceedings concluded shortly thereafter, with various committees assigned to review specific aspects of the proposal. As the chamber began to empty, Dr. Wright approached Dylan with a data pad in hand. "Captain, the preliminary reaction has been even more positive than we anticipated," she reported. "The scientific consortium is particularly interested in our xenobiology findings. They've requested additional data on the comparative neurophysiology studies." Dylan nodded. "Make sure they get everything they need. This is as much about building trust as it is about the expedition itself." Nearby, Vizara was engaged in conversation with her own team, her powerful tail swishing slowly in what humans had learned indicated thoughtful consideration. After a moment, she padded over to join Dylan and Dr. Wright. "The matriarchs have sent their approval of today's proceedings," she announced. "They were surprised by my choice of greeting, but acknowledge its effectiveness." Dylan smiled. "High praise indeed from the matriarchs. I've only met 3 of them, but easily surprised isn't how I would describe any of them." "They also," Vizara continued, a hint of amusement in her rumbling voice, "request that if you return to La'ar Prime for the seasonal celebration, you bring more of the fermented grain beverage that caused such interest during your last visit." "Whiskey," Dylan clarified with a chuckle. "I'm sure that can be arranged, though I'm still recovering from watching your Huntmaster Karok consume an entire bottle without blinking." "Larian metabolism," Dr. Wright interjected with professional interest. "Their liver analogs process alcohol nearly 3 times more efficiently than human organs, though I'm still documenting the apparent cultural significance they've attached to the shared consumption of intoxicants." "It is simple," Vizara explained. "To lower one's guard through shared vulnerability, whether through a bow or through temporary impairment, is to demonstrate ultimate trust. Your whiskey ritual mirrors our own ceremonial practices in ways that transcend our biological differences." As the 3 continued their discussion, moving toward the exit, they were approached by a young aide from one of the minor council species, a being with features that reminded Dylan of Earth's otters, though with an additional set of manipulator limbs and large, expressive eyes. "Excuse me," the aide said hesitantly, "but there's been a request from the Educational Consortium. They're wondering if both of you might be willing to address a group of diplomatic students about your alliance. Many of our younger members have expressed fascination with how 2 such formidable species have forged cooperation." Dylan and Vizara exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. "We would be honored," Dylan replied. "Though I should warn you, Pack leader Vizara's idea of an educational demonstration once involved hunting down a simulated adversary through maintenance tunnels. The students learned much about coordinated tactical operations." Vizara defended, her tone perfectly serious, though Dylan could detect the subtle markers of her species' version of humor. "And only 3 required medical attention." The aide's eyes widened considerably before he realized the Larian was joking, at least partially. "I'll, make note of the need for appropriate safety measures," he managed, backing away with a nervous bow when he was gone. Dr. Wright shook her head in exasperation. "You 2 enjoy terrorizing the council species far too much." "Not terrorizing," Dylan corrected. "Educating. There's a difference." "Indeed," Vizara agreed. "Fear based on ignorance is dangerous. Fear based on accurate understanding is merely respect." As they made their way out of the council chamber and into the broad concourse beyond, they were met with curious stares from representatives of dozens of species. But where earlier those stares had been fearful, now they held a new element. Wonder, perhaps, or at least the beginning of understanding. The journey that had brought humans and Larians together had begun with caution and wariness, had evolved through respect and cooperation, and now stood at the threshold of something new, a partnership that could reshape the very foundations of interstellar relations. Dylan paused at a viewport overlooking the docking bays, where human and Larian ships rested side by side, different in design but complementary in purpose. "We've come a long way from that first encounter in the Carillion expanse," he observed quietly. Vizara's amber eyes followed his gaze. "The distance between stars is vast," she replied, "but the distance between understanding and ignorance is vaster still." "Poetic for a predator," Dylan teased gently. "All hunters must also be philosophers," Vizara countered, "or we would never ponder what lies beyond the next hill." As they stood there, representatives of Earth and La Prime, the future stretched before them like the stars themselves, infinite in possibility, challenging in its mysteries, but no longer to be faced alone. In the grand chamber behind them, the Galactic Council continued its deliberations, still struggling to comprehend the implications of what they had witnessed. But for Dylan Sebastian and pack leader Vizara, the path forward was already clear. Two Deathworld species had met, and one had bowed, not in submission, but in recognition of a truth as old as life itself, that sometimes the greatest strength lies in the choice to extend trust rather than dominance. And in that choice, perhaps, lay the future of the galaxy itself.